Welcome back to the Redwood Violin. This week I continued refining the back and the top. I finished making my glue, and I had a meeting with my friend Mark Tindley about the possibility of doing some marquetry on the violin. Last week I rough carved the back and the top plates, and this week I'm going to refine and finish those arches. Now the shape of the arching has a big influence on the sound of the violin and the responsiveness of it, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on that as I go. A good way to see the arch is to hold it up to the edge of the bench and cast a shadow. And I'm looking for symmetry and the way that the curves flow into each other. To shape the tighter curves in the C-bouts, I use a gouge. And then I'm ready to start smoothing using this cabinet scraper. And with this tool you can both smooth and shape. I'm refining the curves as I go, but this is just a preliminary cleanup. I still need to put a recurve in the edges. First I cut in a channel all the way around the edge of the instrument. And then I blend the channel into the arch. And the way those two curves meet each other has an effect on the tone. You get a different effect if the arch goes full all the way up to the edge of the plate, or if it dips down deeply and then comes back up again. And then a final finish with another scraper. And feeling the surface for bumps and ridges, you can actually feel more than you can see. And there's the finished back arch. You can see this lovely colour variation in the wood. And you can see the channel running all the way around there. So the edges are still rough because there's more work that needs to be done. We're going to put purfling in there and then finish that edge. But for now that's done. Shaping the outside of the top's the same as doing the back. So that's already done. Here I've turned it over and I'm starting to hollow it out. First with a big plane and then moving on to smaller planes. So this device is copied from one in the Stradivari Museum in Cremona. You set a height, that rod is threaded. So you set a height and punch a lot of holes in, then you just go back and plane away till the holes are missing. So once the plate's close to thickness, I mark on the F holes. Start with this little hole cutter tool. It leaves a nice clean cut for the eyes of the F hole. And now I'll use my template to join those holes together with a nice F. So the design of the F hole and its placement all affect the tone of the finished instrument. I'm using a Strad F hole, which tends to give a rich tone but a slightly stiffer feeling instrument. Saw to the line with a fret saw. And clean it up with a knife. Getting in those very tip corners is kind of tricky. So there's the F-holes, And now I'm going to keep on thinning the plate down until I get the tap tone that I want. So here's the top with the F-holes. I weighed the specific gravity of some of this redwood. It's incredibly light, 0.27. That's like 40% of what I'd normally be using. So what I decided to do was make it very extra thick in the middle, and then just clean down the ends until I got the tap tone that I'm used to getting. And I did that. I've got a D note here, which is good, and it's ringing like a bell. Nice sustain, and that's going to sound really good. The weight is 64 grams. That's regular for a top. So it's all normal, apart from the thickness is about 40% more than usual. So this plate is ready to get glued onto the box, except for I need to stick a base bar in this side, and I'll be doing that next week. Here's my glue broth that I made last week. It's cooled and gelled, and it has this kind of white scum on top, and when I rub it between my fingers and wash my fingers, it leaves a kind of a fatty residue, so that's not good for the glue. I scraped that off and reheated it, and here it is after another day of reducing slowly on a low heat. And you can see that the gel is quite a lot thicker. And on the third day, I'd gotten down to this glue that's of about a texture that I normally use it for gluing. So poured that out into a tray, a lined tray. So it gelled up in about half an hour. Part of the reason I wanted to get it this thick is that on a previous batch I poured it out when it was a lot thinner because I wanted to strain it, and I put it out to dry and it got moldy. Mold started breaking it down and liquefied it before it even dried properly. So this time I've gone thicker, and what I had to do was cut it up into smaller pieces, because once that sheet is dry it becomes like hard rigid plastic and you cannot cut it up. There we are after a couple of days of drying. You got a very plausible looking glue. Here it is. I got 200 grams of tendon glue. It's a lot better quality than the first batch, and I got easily enough to finish the violin and probably make a couple of cellos too. I want the Redwood violin to be easily recognizable and identified with Sonoma County. So I invited my friend Mark Tindley down to discuss the possibilities of doing some marquetry on the back. There's some technical difficulties to be considered, like the fact that the back is only 2 millimeters thick in some places. And also the compound curves of the back present some problems. Most marquetry is usually done on flat surfaces. Mark seemed pretty sure that they could find ways to do this. We spent most of our time talking about what kind of image might work. Something that would say something about Sonoma County but wasn't overwhelming or too gaudy. We're both of a mind that violins in general are beautiful things that don't need any additional decorations or enhancements. And the new back for the Redwood violin already has some beautiful, engaging features in the wood. So the idea of adding to it is a bit like thinking about getting a tattoo, not something you want to rush into. Mark took the violin back with him, and he's going to talk with Greg, and we'll all talk about possible designs soon.